I get such a sense of belonging in the outdoors when you find those crappie or you take a whitetail, all the puzzle pieces and figuring that out. You feel accomplished when you're doing that.
Definitely.
We fished 120 days last year. The hard part's not catching them. The hard part's finding them.
Well, there's tip number one right there.
People say, well, what kind of depth finder to use? And I said, well, if I'm wading the creek, I said, it's a pair of Chuck Taylor tennis shoes. 60 Seasons was my second book, and I felt compelled to write that. To take somebody's learning curve and accelerate that. It's just full of fishing tips that are practical fishing tips. If you're looking for a big fish, which,
who's not?
Yeah. I've got on my record over 1,500 over 5 pounds, with the biggest being 11.3 caught in the state of Tennessee. And most of mine were caught on jigs because they're silent. They've got a natural swimming motion. It's a random action because each one of us would fish that a little bit differently.
Sure.
They never catch on to that. I'll have people come up and say, I want something that looks like a minnow and acts like a minnow. I said, why don't you buy a minnow? You can frown on it when you see those stringers full of big crappie.
The award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We got a great show lined up for you today.
We sure do. We have Joey Montelone back with us today.
I'm excited.
Man, I'm excited too.
He's got all kinds of great tips for us, great insight. He's been fishing for a long time. We'll get into the years here in a minute maybe and discuss a few things, but I'm excited to have him. Don, do you want to kick off with the station?
That radio thing that we do the little shout out, I mean, it's only appropriate that we do WSM 650, WSM, the home of the Grand Ole Opry, because Joey's on there every single weekday morning. So if you get up early enough, you catch he and Bill Cody, Charlie Mattis, and the gang doing outdoor news and a lot about fishing, of course, because Joey's doing it. But there's a lot of good stuff about wearing your life jacket, about just good common sense outdoor stuff. And so anyway, we are on with Wildcast as well, 6:30 a.m. on Saturday mornings, and every day of the week at 5:55 you can tune in and hear the Wildcast extras. So anyway, excited to have Joey here with us today.
We appreciate our radio partners, and as always, go check us out on your favorite podcasting platform. Like us, share us, follow us, find us out there on social media, and like us, follow us there too.
We are everywhere.
Yeah. We are everywhere, and we are glad to have Joey with us. Joey Montelone, he's everywhere. He's out in the water fishing all the time, and he's going to fill us up with all kinds of fishing insight here today.
Yeah, and I hunt, but usually if it's nice enough to be outside, I'm going to fish. But I like climbing up in that tree stand too. Boy, watching the woods wake up. And I was talking to Debbie on the way in here, my partner Debbie Bryan. As we were coming in, I was talking about. I said, I've been to a lot of places. I've been lucky. I guided for canoe trips in Canada for 27 summers and fished in Mexico doing a video for Bass Pro Shops and been to Hawaii and fished the freshwater Dole pineapple plantation lakes down there. And everywhere I've been, I'll tell you, I've never been anywhere that's prettier and more diverse than the state of Tennessee. And I lived in Missouri, which is, it's a pretty state and we've got a lot of stuff, but it's not Tennessee. It's not Tennessee.
Yeah.
So I won't be saying I'll be Tennesseeing you for a long time. I'm going to turn my toes up here, I can tell you. Pretty great place.
Yeah, Tennessee is a place to be. It's beautiful. From east to west, you got all different topography, and it's just amazing the difference, from each corner.
Yeah, and the 3 stars on the flag, I didn't know this until recently, but the 3 stars on the flags are indications of the different geographic we have. We've got the mountains if you go east, we've got the Mississippi Delta essentially if you go west, and my heart belongs in middle.
Yeah.
Love it. I mean, we got a little bit of everything, and you're not too far from anything because you can get to any place you want to go pretty quickly.
You are exactly right. Yeah. I've been everywhere, man.
Yeah. Hank Snow.
I forget about all those places that you've had the pleasure and the opportunity to fish, but hey, Tennessee's still home.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is. No, I do often say there's no place I'd rather be than in Tennessee, and that's true. I mean, when I went to Canada, I mean, more smallmouth than should be legally allowed. But I couldn't wait to get back home. I want to get back to where home is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you like the outdoors, I just can't think of any place where you can do all the same things in one state like you can here.
Yeah.
Even if it's not hunting or fishing, we talk about there's a plate for Watchable Wildlife. Where we live now, we moved down to Deckard, and we live right on Woods Lake. And I'm telling you, eagles, seagulls, pelicans. Last week we had a fox, a beaver, and several other creatures walking by in our front yard. If you're a turkey hunter and you want to come by and sit on the porch and shoot your turkey, I mean, marching right past the house. I mean, it's just crazy, and we love it. I mean, there's something I never tire of seeing white-tailed deer. And
I know it never gets old.
And if you think about the restoration programs. I'm older than both. I'm older than both you put together, Bob. But
no.
But the thing about that is, for people that lived here, in the early '50s and said you didn't see any deer, I say you can thank the TWRA, the restoration program.
Yeah.
And if you want to start counting them off, the elk, the sturgeon, the wild turkey, those are success stories that belong to the TWRA. Wonderful, wonderful success stories.
This message brought to you by Joey Montelone.
I believe it. I mean, it's easy for me. And by the way, I'm wearing the life jacket as a reminder.
I was going to make sure we're not on water right now, Joey. Why are you wearing your life jacket?
Well, it's a reminder to people. It's a reminder to people that they float, you don't.
Yeah.
And I believe in the life jackets. We do not. We fish out of kayaks, and we do not. I don't care where we are. It can be a creek that's 4 feet deep. We're wearing a life jacket all the time because you shouldn't have to have somebody tell you to do that, but we feel like we're examples for people. That if somebody sees us out and recognizes us saying, "Oh, I caught you," no. If you catch me without a life jacket, you come on up. I'm going to give you some big prize, but you're not going to see me without a life jacket.
Amen.
And they do save lives.
Yep, they do. They do. And as much as you guys post, I mean, that's awesome. Just out there promoting the sport and the opportunities we have here in Tennessee. Plus, it's understated, but you've got your life jackets on. We appreciate that
all the time. Well, I appreciate you all in the reminders because and just a tip for the kayakers. I always say, people say, well, what do you think of live scope? And what do you I said, if it's legal and you choose to do it that way, that's your preference. I say that's why there's chocolate and vanilla ice cream. But for me, I'm telling kayakers, I would suggest that you don't wear an inflatable life jacket because it requires some action on your part. If you're wearing one of these full jackets, if you go over, you don't have to do anything other than bob and go back to where you belong. So I suggest it. Plus, in the wintertime, these are warmer.
Yeah.
So there's an advantage of doing this. And they make them now where, you've got so much mobility that you can cast and you can paddle and you can do everything you could do otherwise. You forget that it's even on.
Right. Yeah.
So it's life jackets do save lives. I'm pleading with people every week, please wear your life jackets, put them on your kids, be an example to the other people in the outdoors. So gun safety, life jackets, the whole 9 yards. Make sure you that's how you get home every outing is being safe.
Yeah. Well, if there are other types of life jackets out there. Those inflatables, like you mentioned, some of them are automatic, which are great. If that's what you want, at least you got one on, right? I mean, you know which one is the right one, especially if you're riding a jet ski. You can't wear inflatables on a jet ski and things like that, and kids can't wear them. Make sure you get your life jacket on a kid too, right? I know you'd even give them one off your back.
I would because we carry spares. And when people say, I do this with everybody. I'm a equal opportunity offender. I see somebody out there that's not wearing a life jacket, and I'll send them a private message on Facebook or Instagram saying, "No life jacket, man." I said, "That's a bad thing to do." And he said, "I swim like the fish." And I said, when I was guiding in Canada and people would kind of balk about wearing the life jacket, I said, "You ever been plunged into 62-degree water where you can't see the other side?" I said, there's a difference between jumping into a pool and being flipped out of a boat, which is a traumatic event, or if you have your child, or people get nutty about their equipment, and they're saying, I'm telling you, that life jacket's going to save your life.
Yeah.
And you don't have to think. This is thinking for you. When you go in, it's like it's saying, go back to the... And if you've never been pitched out of a boat, and I have been twice, a big bass boat and a kayak that I turtled, that I rolled because I did something stupid, admitting I did something stupid, and I was going after a custom-made rod, and I lurched forward, and it rolled my kayak. It was in March. I was by myself in 52-degree water, popped right back up, lost 4 rods, but I didn't lose my life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the kayak's fault, and the life jacket, without a doubt, I believe saved my life.
Yeah. Man.
That's a good message and one to take home and remember.
Yep.
Well, and you know more about it than anybody. You're out there 100+ days a year, right? Fishing and having a good time, and most of the time now in a kayak, right?
Most of the time in a kayak. We fished 120 days last year, and they weren't all pretty. and if you're in a kayak, the wind is not your friend.
Right.
You know, they call the wind Mariah. I don't call the wind Mariah. I can't tell you what I call the wind. But and there's times too when we say it's just not safe to go out.
Yeah.
You know, and I love to be outdoors as much as anybody, and I'm with somebody who feels exactly the same way. But there's times when you say, we don't, you know, I've been criticized for saying this, but I really believe this. There's no such thing as bad weather, just people who aren't prepared for it.
Right.
So when there's cold weather, if you're dressed properly and you're wearing all the safety equipment that you should wear, and you know, people that are climbing into tree stands and you're not wearing a safety harness, you know, you're climbing into a boat, you know, when the weather's even a little sketchy, if it's not too far out of bounds, go.
Yeah.
You know, go and enjoy that and enjoy it for what it is. And if you're a hunter and you go out in the cold, buddy, I'm telling you, you're going to see some wildlife.
Yeah.
They've got to keep moving and they got to eat. You know, so you're going to see some wildlife. And if you're a fisherman, if you're missing winter fishing, you're missing a bunch.
Yeah.
Because when you're on them, you know, they're not going to be in 2 feet of water, but boy, when you find them, they're all schooled up and you can catch as many as you can catch, you know, so it's quite a deal. And again, we live in a state that we have winter, but not a lot of winter.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it can get cold sometimes, but it's winter has some warm days too.
Yeah.
Here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
for sure.
And to me, if I see 2 or 3 warm days in January or February, I go and I look for the northwest side of the lake and I go to launch ramps, sandbars, rock piles, and all that, because that heat will radiate and those bait fish will start to move in. And I'm telling you, it's almost like it shouldn't be fair, because you go in there, you're going to catch them, and you'll find them. The hard part's not catching them. The hard part's finding them. Once you find them, you can catch them.
Well, there's tip number 1 right
Yeah.
there. I like that.
Joey's great at documentation. You know, he can let you know how many bass he's caught in his career, and I noticed there's 60 years of documentation, plus 60 plus years right now, right?
Yeah. 60 Seasons was my second book, and I felt compelled to write that because when something happens to me, and I'm not goofy enough to think I'm going to live forever, so if something happens to me, I didn't want the knowledge that I gained the hard way. I wanted to take somebody's learning curve and accelerate that, whether it's a kid or an adult, and so I wrote 60 Seasons, and it's just full of fishing tips that are practical fishing tips. And it's not no tech, but it's low tech. You know, that when people say, well, what kind of depth finder do you use? And I said, well, if I'm wading the creek, I said, it's a pair of Chuck Taylor tennis shoes. I said, otherwise, it's a pair of Strike King sunglasses. And I said, you know, I'm an instinctive kind of, and whether I hunt or fish, it's all the same. And boy, I get such a sense of belonging in the outdoors when you find those crappie or you take a whitetail or whatever, you know, and it's all the puzzle pieces and figuring that out. Yeah. Man, you feel accomplished when you're doing that.
Definitely. And chasing turkeys, that's a hard one. This time of year, turkeys it takes some skill to get on one of those birds.
Yeah, and I guess, and I'm guessing this because I'm not much of a turkey hunter, but I'm guessing that after early part of the season, they kind of get a little bit wary, and you know, so it's a little bit different. And here again, shout out to the TWRA, because for me, I see things, and you guys are not reactive, you're proactive. And when the flock is dwindling, and you go back and change the season by 2 weeks, and you know, so you cut off 2 weeks in the front, and you can take a Jake, but you do want to go to tnwildlife.org and make sure that you're getting everything correct.
Right.
You know. Exactly. Yep.
But you know, that's a reaction to that. In deer season, whatever region you're in, you need to check, because there was like a doe a day for years in certain regions. It's not that way anymore, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because from when people understand what I love about this is true to your vision statement and mission statement is you're managing for sustainable populations. And that's what it's all about, whether it's fishing or hunting or whatever it is. That when you see that 12-year-old kid out there and said, there's going to be deer because of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, you know, the days of taking 100 crappie and cleaning them, those days are over. And I don't want to clean 12 of anything.
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's like, so go back in there and, you know, catch and release. And, you know, in the fall for the crappie, it's released to the grease, you know, and in the spring, In the spring,
love that.
you in the spring you don't want to take all those crappie because you don't want to decimate your fishing hole. So the spawners, I call it the 50-50 rule. You catch one, if you want to keep it, then you put the next one back. So when you go back next year, there's not, hey, we're all a crappie. Well, they're here. They're here because you put some of them back in the fall or post spawn. You want to take a few, take a few.
Yeah.
But, for us, it's like whatever you can get that's a meal. And the smallest legal fish is the most renewable resource. Like if you're in a place where the bass are, it's any size and 5 no matter what they are, take a 10 or 11-inch bass. That's replaceable in a year and a half. When you take a 5-pounder, plus there's no sense in eating a 5-pound fish. But to me, it's like if you're taking a 5-pounder, that's probably 7 or 8 years worth of growth there.
Yeah.
So it's going to take 7 or 8 years and the genetics to do that. So that shouldn't be lost on people.
Yeah.
Definitely. I've been sitting here thinking about the kayak stuff. You do a lot of fishing out of a kayak. What's some pointers you'd give folks? I know you're a Jackson guy, but for any kayak, what kind of gear do you need or things that you need for that kayak or you think would be valuable for a fisherman?
I am going to be posting a blog post that I just did that's basic stuff, and it doesn't matter to me who I use sponsor stuff, but it doesn't matter to me. Get a quality life jacket because safety first.
Yeah.
And when I would do the boat show, and I've done them all over the country, when I do a boat show and somebody'd say, well, I don't want to do a kayak. I said, bad experience, right? And I said, yeah, how'd you know? I said, that's usually what stops people from kayaks and canoes. And they'd say, well, I can get such and such. I can get that little 9-foot kayak and it's this. And I said, I have one question for you. You got grandkids? I said, yeah. I said, would you put your grandkid in that? And I said, no. I said, then don't buy it. It's the same way. So safety first. So get, the quality of the kayak is based off of what you're going to use it for.
Okay.
If you're going to fish little creeks and streams, and if you go to the 18 jewels of the Tennessee, the TWRA managed lakes, I had an 8.5 pounder the first time I fished over at Browns Creek. That didn't happen by accident.
Yeah, right.
My catch might have been by accident, but they're there because they're managed. So where you're going to use it. So life jacket, we carry flags that we can put up in the back of our kayaks so we're visible.
Sure.
We carry whistles so we're audible, so you can hear us. And I will stand up in my kayak and wave my paddle if I think a big boater doesn't see me. And I got to tell you, most of the big boaters, regardless of the kind of boat, are very respectful of the kayakers, and the kayakers need to do exactly the same thing. So if we're rounding a point, we watch really close that we're not, getting in somebody else's way that's cutting around the river channel. So being visible, being audible, taking care of yourself from a life jacket standpoint, and then the little tools that everybody should carry. Like I keep a night light, just in case you should be thinking, if I get stuck out here, what am I going to do? So a dry box for your phone and your car keys. It's a lot of little stuff to add up. Making sure that you're warm enough out there. People say, well, it looks, I said, just going to tell you, you can always take it off, but you can't, it's like you can pull up to the dock and say, anybody got a jacket they want to sell? So making sure footwear, headwear, all that.
Yeah.
And then sunglasses and hats keep hooks out of eyes and heads. So wearing a hat, besides when you don't have any hair, it's a really good thing to do. And wearing the glasses is important too, because when you're, whether you're doing it or somebody else is close to you, branches or whatever. So it's really kind of a basic list of stuff. Get you a paddle that you're comfortable with. So you can go out and buy a paddle for $49, but you got a $49 paddle. You can go out and buy a kayak for $300, but in 2 months when you say it's cracked, so resale value on a kayak is a lot like a big boat. You can't justify eating the fish, because if you got a bass boat and you're justifying eating the fish, I'm sorry to tell you, those fish are costing you like $1,200 a pound. So go out there with the idea in mind that you're going to recreate, and to me, introducing somebody, like when we've done some of the free fishing days, which is the first Saturday in June, I believe, and you guys stock catfish. And I remember we went to, I think it was Centennial Park, and watching a kid catch their first fish. And I've been lucky enough to do that very often, and you watch their faces light up. But if you want to have some fun, watch the parents, because they're seeing their kid catch their first fish.
Yeah.
And now I hate to say it, but they're both hooked for life.
Yeah.
And I've had people tell me, we would have never known how to do this, and now it's something that we can do. what a success story that is. That's how your legacy lives on, by introducing other people to the outdoors.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, share the passion.
And I love your down-to-earth approach too, Joey, especially, thinking back to some of the earlier Wild Side episodes, and you do the fishing segment on those Wild Side episodes, dating back to early 2000s, and one thing that always sticks in my mind is the Tennessee tackle box.
Oh yeah.
And basically that was like a brown lunch bag, that a kid would carry to school, and with a few lures and some hooks and sinkers and stuff in it. And what would you carry in your Tennessee tackle box?
Well, you know what you're going to use. We all go out there and we got to have 108 fish catching colors of crankbaits, and it's
right.
It's what I saw Saturday, so I'm buying one of those. No, wait, I got to buy 2 of those. Well, if I lose one, maybe I need 3 of them because my buddy may want one. So for me, it's like I want to cover all the water columns. When Topwater Action is happening, and if you live in Tennessee, April and May, take out the topwaters. Because there's nothing more fun than seeing a smallmouth hit a topwater bait. It looks like somebody threw a soilet out of an airplane. I mean, it really is good stuff, So you see that happen. So covering all the water columns where you kind of experiment, and we have something we do. We will try the quietest lures first. So throw in your plastic worms, throw in your minnow plugs, throw those first, then move to something that's got a little more sound and vibration, might be a spinnerbait. Then you go to the lipless crankbaits and all that kind of stuff. So sound, quiet first, then the next, and cover surface, mid-level, and lower level. And if the water's got a flow to it, if it's got a heavy flow, those fish stay down. That's how they don't get traveled, down further.
Sure.
As they stay down or they get behind things. So if there's an obstruction for that fish to wait behind, they're pretty smart. They'll sit there and wait. They'll wait behind something and dart out and grab it and go back to. So for me, it's going to be soft plastics are going to be in there. When fishing is really tough, smaller lures and slower retrieves almost always will catch you a fish. So an 1/8 ounce lead head, some small tubes, some little small 3-inch worms, those kind of things. Carry those with you. The little spins, like the little old beetle spins, or Slider makes something. I'm trying to remember what they call theirs. But at any rate, a little spinner type bait, a little safety pin spinner for kids and even for adults. When fishing gets tough, that's a good thing to throw.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a big fish, which I'm.
Who's not?
Yeah. I've got on my record over 1,500 over 5 pounds, with the biggest being 11.3 caught in the state of Tennessee, and most of mine were caught on jigs because they're silent. They've got a natural swimming motion. They've got, it's a random action because each one of us would fish that a little bit differently.
Sure.
They never catch on to that ever. So a jig is my number one as far as looking for a big fish. And you can use a finesse jig. You can go down to instead of a 3/8 or a half, you can go down to a 1/4 or an 1/8 ounce and put a smaller, like a little rage tail baby crawl in the back of that. We catch a lot of fish doing that.
Yeah.
So when the water's clear, when the water's really hot, in extremes, smaller baits will almost always catch a few more fish.
Definitely. Small baits will catch any size. Even some of the big baits. You'll be surprised those fish think I got a bigger mouth than they really do.
and how many times do you hear a crappie fisherman saying, I was throwing a little crappie jig and caught a 5-pound bass, because the big baits give, you have to have really good presentation. So a big bait's going to give you more clues as to not being real, but a small bait, that's a little bit of a different story. That's why people catch a lot of big fish at night, because their mistakes are hidden. If you've got, you can throw well rope, you can throw 60-pound line out there if you want to, and you can throw the musky jitterbug. They just say blah blah blah, and so they come calling on it. So night fishing, a lot of people catch big fish at night, and a lot of people catch accidental fish. I mean, I caught a catfish in the Stones River on a jig that when I'm holding it up, and I'll post this picture, when I'm holding it up, the tail's dragging in the kayak and I've got it up to my shoulder.
Oh, wow.
It was a flathead, and I'm not good at give me a bass, I can tell you within a couple ounces what it weighs. With a catfish, it's like, I'm going to look at it and say, it's probably 50. But this was a legit, like a 3.5 foot long catfish, a big flathead. And if there's an uglier fish in the state, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Boy, those fish are ugly.
Yeah.
But caught it by accident. But that's another mark of a good lure if it's multi-species. And if you don't mind, while we're talking about multi-species,
sure.
If you don't know this, go to your website, or I like the little books. I still like having the book, where I can refer to the books. So there's a boating book, there's a fishing book, there's a hunting book. But if you get the fishing book on page 44, it's got the Tennessee state records. We hold 7 world record freshwater fish in the state of Tennessee, and most notably for me anyway is a 5-pound crappie, a 25-pound walleye, and of course the 11-15 smallmouth, a record that'll never be broken.
Right.
You know, you got to break it by 2 ounces for the IGAF to recognize it. That ain't going to happen. Between fishing pressure, a lot of different things that happen, and if you catch a smallmouth and it's illegal and you want to eat it, you can't eat it at my house, but if you want to eat it, it's yours. It's your fish, so you do what you want. But there's a lot of reasons why that record will never, ever, ever be broken. And I think that was in 1955. I want to say.
Yep, that's right.
It sure doesn't keep people from trying, though. It's fun to go after them and try to get that record in it.
It sure is.
Oh, and until I was lucky enough to catch an 8-pound smallmouth, and I'm telling you, if you don't have a reverence for a fish that size or that 11-pound largemouth, I mean, I look at those fish and no taxidermist, certainly no fillet knife. I mean, you look at those fish and think about how old that is, and they are the superior. They're the 14-point whitetail in the water. When you catch a fish over 10 or a smallmouth over 5 or 6. So
right.
Give that fish its life back, put it back, and watch it swim away. I mean, it give you goosebumps just watching it swim away and thinking about who's going to catch it next. I have people say, well, what'd that fish weigh? I said, I don't know. I'll let the next person weigh it. It's like, I'm putting it back.
Well, I love those tips, the Tennessee tackle box or Tennessee tackle bag, maybe we're going to call it. But just, having some variations and trying the different levels, that's good tips for folks, to start low, or start shallow, I guess, and go deep and quiet to loud. I like that. That's good stuff.
Oh, it makes sense. I mean, if you've never, and for me, it's like I love to fish a farm pond because it's really a test tank for all the lures that you have. So, I mean, if you even want to drop shot, which is thought of as a deep water, clear water, throw that in a farm pond that's 5 or 6 feet. It still works, So throwing minnow plugs, and I kind of laugh sometimes because we get so caught up on all the hype, and I love to throw a minnow plug. I mean, I love to throw a minnow plug, and I'll have people come up and say, I want something that looks like a minnow and acts like a minnow. I said, why don't you buy a minnow? I mean, there's nothing wrong with fishing live bait. I mean, people for years frowned on it. It's like you can frown on it when you see those stringers full of big crappie.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a minnow worked in a treetop. It's going to work forever because, especially if you've never seined and you have to have a fishing license to seine your bait. So if you've ever seined bait like in a small creek, you'll see that those wild shiners and the stuff that's in there, they have a natural fear of fish. So when you put that in there, and if you're running a cork, and I found some natural cork floats. That's what we called them when we were kids because they were made out of cork.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Now they're styrofoam and plastic, whatever. But if you see that cork get nervous, there's a reason for that. That a fish is chasing that. And so, they have a natural fear of that. And if you're going to seine, be prepared. You're going to see some banded water snakes. Might catch a crawfish, but what's really cool is when you're seining, you catch like last year's crappie, and it's about 3 inches long. It looks just like a crappie, only smaller. But it's pretty cool the things that you'll find. And if you know anything about stream health, you'll see that if you've got freshwater mussels or you've got different aquatic vegetation, if you've got mayflies, if you've got dragonflies, if you've got all those kind of things, that's an indication of a crawfish. That's an indication of freshwater health. If you want to know, if it's a good stream, that's a good indication.
Yeah. Well, we got about a minute and a half. We're going to run out of time here, but Joey, tell us about this book one more time. Make sure people know where to find it and what it's all about.
60 Seasons, a Fishing Guide is the name of it by me, and it's available on Amazon. It's going to help me buy a little bit more fishing tackle if you'll get one of these. 10% of the proceeds for the 3 books that I've written go to St. Jude's Children's Hospital.
Awesome.
Yeah.
More than glad to do that.
Nice.
You give back. It's giving some back to your community, and it's full of fishing tips. I mean, full of fishing tips.
And he said before the show started, you can highlight in it, you can dog ear the pages, you can do whatever you want to. It's
a guide.
It's
just
a guide.
like my wife does her cooking books.
There you go.
Same thing.
Let's not talk about our wives cooking. No, I'm just All right, Joe, it's been fun. It's been great. I
Went in a hurry.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here. Let's go fishing.
Let's do it.
And maybe we'll do another show with you sometime. And I hear you got some pretty cool dirt fishing.
We'll come to you next time, Joey.
Okay.
All right.
This is Tennessee WildCast. Don, thank you.
You bet. And I think it's only fair that we have Joey sign us off today.
Yeah. Go for it.
I'll be Tennesseeing you.
There you go. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.